I am no longer his daughter. I stared at the name tag on the reception desk, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice. Lucy. The family disappointment. The bold, tiny letters cut straight into my heart. I blinked once, then again, hoping I had read it wrong. But no. The words remained, indifferent, as if someone was merely labeling a cocktail rather than trampling on a person's dignity. Laughter erupted from the bar. I didn't have to look to know whose voice it was. Karen, the woman who always found a way to belittle me under the guise of a harmless joke. I lifted my gaze and met her smug, satisfied smirk as she sipped her wine. My heart pounded, not from fear but from anger. I clenched my fingers around the name tag, feeling the cold plastic press against my skin. What could I do? Throw it on the floor? Tear it apart? Grab a glass of wine and toss it in her face? No. I knew this game too well. Karen always knew how to provoke me. If I reacted, I'd be the hot-headed, selfish daughter. The disappointment. Just as she had labeled me. I took a deep breath and placed the name tag back on the desk, as if it meant nothing to me. But inside, I knew. I hadn't just put down a name tag. I had let go of the final drop of patience I had left. My father's birthday party was held in the luxurious mansion Karen never missed a chance to brag about. A grand chandelier sparkled overhead, and the dinner table was set with extravagant dishes, meals he never let me touch as a child. The guests were his closest friends. Or rather, people who matched his status. Wealthy, powerful. I stepped inside, feeling like an intruder. No one truly noticed me. The handshakes, the laughter, the toasts. They all passed by without a space for me. I glanced around, searching for a familiar face. Where was my father? Then, I saw him, standing in the center of the crowd like a king greeting his subjects. He was beaming as Olivia, Karen's daughter, boasted about her new job. Beside her, Hunter, Karen's son, nodded in agreement with a proud smirk. They were the perfect children my father had always wanted. And me? I was just an afterthought. My father lifted his gaze, his eyes landing on me for less than a second. A fleeting moment, but long enough for me to understand everything. The distance, the indifference, and worst of all, the disappointment. He hadn't wanted me to come. He didn't even bother to hide it. I let out a quiet, bitter chuckle. What had I expected? A hug? A warm, "My dear daughter, I'm so glad you're here"? Don't be naive, Lucy. I made my way to the drink table, picking up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. My hand trembled slightly, but I wouldn't let anyone see it. I wouldn't let anyone see me as weak. What the hell are you doing here, Lucy? I asked myself. I took a sip, feeling the cold liquid slide down my throat, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. Then, footsteps approached from behind. Lucy, long time no see. Karen's voice, syrupy sweet, laced with poison. I turned, meeting her artificial smile. Karen, I gave her a small smile. It really has been a while. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning me with a calculating look. I'm surprised to see you here, I thought. She trailed off before shrugging. You were busy with, what was it again, freelancing? I knew exactly what she meant. I didn't work for a prestigious corporation. I didn't have a shiny title. I didn't live up to this family's standards. I smirked. But before I could respond, she let out a soft chuckle, patting my shoulder lightly. But anyway, I suppose it's nice that you're here. Then, lowering her voice just enough for only me to hear, she added, especially since someone prepared a little gift for you. A gift. I frowned, then followed her gaze toward the reception desk. And then it clicked. The gift was that damn name tag. Rage surged through me like a storm. But instead of letting it consume me, I felt something else. A strange, chilling calm. I am not that 14-year-old girl anymore. I am no longer the weak girl who had to endure their cruel jokes. I set my glass down on the table and took a deep breath. If they wanted to play with me, I would show them that I was no longer the Lucy they could mock. I stood in the middle of the party, the laughter and chatter around me nothing more than a cheap background track. Memories crashed over me like a storm, dragging me back to a time when I was still a naive child who believed my father's love was unconditional. Back then, I was his whole world. I remember the way he used to hold my hand tightly when crossing the street, the afternoons he taught me how to throw a baseball in the backyard, and the nights I curled up in his arms during thunderstorms. I used to think that love would never change. Then Karen came along. My father remarried when I was 10, and everything changed so fast that I didn't even realize I was being pushed to the sidelines of his life. At first I tried to adapt. I smiled when my father introduced me to Karen as the sweetest little girl you'll ever meet, though his tone made it sound like I was just a child who needed to fit in rather than a real part of the family. Karen, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and syrupy sweet smile, hugged me tightly the first time we met, and said, "We're going to be such a happy family, Lucy. We're going to love each other like real family." But we never truly existed as one. Karen only loved her 2 children, Olivia and Hunter. I was just an obstacle. Within a year of their marriage, my father was no longer my father. At first, the changes were subtle. He started missing my parent-teacher conferences, but never forgot to attend Olivia's dance recitals. He was too busy to take me to the park as promised, but he always made time for Hunter's baseball games. I still remember a Friday afternoon when I was 11. I stood outside school for nearly an hour, waiting for him to pick me up. But he never came. I walked home, tears streaming down my face, only to find him in the living room, laughing with Karen and her kids. "Did you forget about me?" I asked, my voice shaking from running and crying. He just sighed, not even looking me in the eye. "Lucy, I was busy. You're old enough to understand, aren't you?" Understand? So Olivier and Hunter didn't have to understand? But I said nothing. Because I knew that in this house, my voice didn't matter. By the time I was 13, I had completely become a shadow. Olivia and Hunter were treated like a princess and a prince, and me? I was the one who did everything. "Lucy, watch Olivia for me." Lucia washed the dishes. I cooked dinner. "Looky, you're older now, stop asking for so much." Older. That was their excuse for every injustice. I was older, so I had to give in. I was older, so I had to understand. I was older, so I no longer needed my father's attention. I remember once, Olivia spilled milk all over the table. Karen turned to me and said, "Clean it up, Lucy." "But I didn't do it," I protested. Karen simply shrugged. "But you're the older sister." Olivia and Hunter could make a mess, scream, do whatever they wanted and face no consequences. And me? I had to stay silent and accept it. Everything reached its breaking point when I turned 18. Before my mother passed away, she had set aside a college fund for me. Every penny was saved with the hope that I could become independent and leave this house behind. But when I needed that money, it was gone. I still remember the shock of opening my bank account and seeing the balance at 0. My throat went dry as I turned to my father and asked him what had happened. And he said it calmly, as if he were talking about the weather. "I used it to help Hunter get into college." My heart shattered. "That was my money," I whispered, my voice trembling with anger. "Hunter needed it more." He shrugged. "You can still apply for scholarships, right?" At that moment, I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. I didn't need to ask Karen. I already knew she was the one who had pushed him to do it. In her eyes, I wasn't worth a future. I hated him from that moment on. That night, I packed my bags and left that house forever. I took care of myself, working any job I could to survive. I didn't need his money, his fake love, or this so-called family. But now, standing in the middle of this extravagant party, with that family disappointment name tag sitting on the table, I realized something. I wasn't the one who should be disappointed. They were. I tightened my grip on my glass and smiled. If they thought I would stay silent and endure like before, they were wrong. I didn't just leave that house with a suitcase. I carried every scar they had carved into me over the years. The day I stepped onto that bus out of town, I swore I would never need them again. And I kept that promise. I threw myself into my studies, working 3 jobs at once to pay for tuition. While Hunter enjoyed his college life with all-night parties and luxury vacations funded by my father, I worked myself to exhaustion just to afford a cramped apartment near campus. I never complained. I had no time for hatred, no energy for nostalgia. I had one goal: never go back to that house. And I succeeded. 4 years later, I graduated with honors. No one from my family attended my graduation. No texts, no calls, nothing. But I never expected them to. I stood among hundreds of graduates, watching as parents hugged their children, took photos, and celebrated their achievements. And me, I stood there, proud of myself, in silence. Even after leaving them behind, I was never truly free. Every now and then, I would receive invitations to my father's parties. Not because he cared, but because he wanted to maintain the image of a good father. I never wanted to go, but the pressure from relatives, the ones who always told me, "Don't let the past affect the family," forced me to show up a few times. And each time, my father found a way to belittle me. I remember a Christmas a few years ago. I reluctantly accepted the invitation and returned to the house I once called home. I had hoped that, after all these years, maybe my father had changed. But the moment I walked in, I knew everything was the same. Hunter, dressed in an expensive suit, bragged about the job my father had pulled strings to get him. Olivia sat on the couch, a diamond ring glinting on her hand, boasting about her latest European vacation. And my father, upon seeing me, simply smirked and said, "Still doing that freelance work?" Up. He didn't wait for me to answer. "Times must be tough. I could ask around and find you a real job." A real job. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. As if everything I had built meant nothing. I wanted to tell him that I had started my own company, that I was more successful than ever, that I didn't need his help. But I knew it wouldn't matter to him. To my father, if I wasn't following the path he had set, I would always be a disappointment. I placed my glass down, met his eyes and said, "You don't need to worry about me, I'm doing just fine." But he only smirked, as if I were just deluding myself. "If you're really doing well, then why are you here alone?" I left the party right after that. After that night, I refused every invitation from my family. I blocked Karen's number, ignored Olivia's messages, and disregarded the passive-aggressive comments from relatives. I didn't need them. But sometimes, whether I wanted to or not, I still had to face my father. The last time was at Olivia's wedding. I didn't want to go, but some part of me thought I should. If only to prove that I had moved on from them. When I stepped into the reception hall, my father looked at me in surprise. Not because he was happy to see me, but because I didn't look like the failure he had always assumed I would be. "Lucy," he blinked. I wore an elegant red dress, my hair in a sleek updo, my makeup subtle yet sharp. I was no longer the weak girl he once knew. "Hello, Dad," I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He studied me for a moment, before clearing his throat. "Have you found a stable job yet?" I almost laughed. Even now he couldn't acknowledge that I had succeeded. I didn't need to find one. I built my own. "Oh?" He nodded, but there was skepticism in his eyes. "That's fine, I suppose. But if you ever want a real career, I can help you." I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger. I just felt pity. He would never admit that I had done well without him, because if he did, he would have to face the truth. That he had been wrong. I placed a hand on his shoulder and gave him a small smile. "No need, Dad. But you can be proud of me. Or not. It makes no difference to me." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned. I was no longer that 18-year-old girl, desperate for his approval. I didn't need it anymore. Now, standing at his birthday party, staring at the family disappointment name tag on the table, all I felt was amusement. Did they think this would hurt me? They had no idea that I had let go of this family a long time ago. I lifted my glass, taking a slow sip of wine. If they thought I would stay silent, they were wrong. I let my gaze sweep across the room, where everyone was dressed to impress, laughing and mingling as if they were part of some perfectly orchestrated performance. But I wasn't part of the show. No one welcomed me. No one truly cared that I was here. Their glances flickered toward me for only a moment, before quickly moving on, as if I were a smudge on their flawless masterpiece. That was fine. I was used to it. My father stood in the corner of the room, a glass of wine in hand, engaged in conversation with a group of powerful-looking businessmen. When his eyes landed on me, I saw a brief flicker of surprise. But it lasted only a second. Then his expression returned to its usual indifference, as if my presence here meant nothing at all. I almost laughed. How foolish I had been to ever expect more from him. I slowly made my way toward the bar, where Hunter and Olivia were chatting with a group of relatives. I had no intention of joining them, but Olivia's sharp voice cut through the air, making me pause. Dad was so generous to pay for my wedding, but honestly, I think that's only natural. She twirled the sparkling diamond ring on her finger, her voice dripping with smugness. Of course. Hunter nodded. Dad always prioritizes the kids with potential. The kids with potential? I pressed my lips together, taking another sip of wine to swallow the anger rising in my throat. So what did that make me in their eyes? But I didn't have time to be angry. Because at that moment, I realized the most important thing of the night. A small table was set near the entrance, where name tags were neatly arranged. No one seemed to pay much attention to them. Except me. I stepped closer, my eyes scanning the names. Uncle Mark. Cousin Rachel. Neighbor Tom. And then I saw it. My heart stopped for a second. Right in front of me was a tag with my name on it, but underneath, printed in small yet unmistakable letters, were two words that made my blood boil. The disappointment. I picked it up, my fingers tightening around the edges until my nails nearly dug into my palm. What a pathetic joke. I didn't need to ask who did this, I already knew. At that moment, laughter rang out from the bar, a voice so familiar that I didn't even need to turn around to know who it was. Karen. She was laughing, a glass of wine in her hand, her eyes gleaming with amusement as she watched me. I took a deep breath and slowly placed the name tag back on the table. I wasn't going to let them win. I didn't snap it in half, I didn't throw it to the floor. I placed it back neatly, aligning it with the others as if nothing had happened. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. I didn't need to react the way they wanted me to. Because I knew exactly what Karen wanted. She wanted me to explode, to lose control, to cause a scene so she could paint me as petty, overly sensitive. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I turned, lifted my glass to my lips, and took a slow sip. As if that name tag meant absolutely nothing to me. And when my eyes met Karen's, I smiled. A calm, unbothered smile. Not angry, not wounded, just contemptuous. That smile made her frown. Not long after, my father approached. He didn't ask about the name tag. He didn't show a hint of anger at the fact that I had just been humiliated in his own party. Instead, he merely glanced at me, took a sip of his drink, and said in that infuriatingly indifferent tone, "I didn't think you'd come." I tilted my head, shrugged. Neither did I. A brief silence. "Are you still doing that job?" His voice was low, as if he was trying to sound polite, but couldn't quite hide the disdain. "Which job?" I raised an eyebrow. "The company you're running." I let out a laugh, unsure if it was from bitterness or exhaustion. "Yes, and it's doing better than ever." He didn't respond right away. He just looked at me for a long moment, as if assessing whether I was lying. Then he sighed, took a sip of his drink. "Good for you." That was it. No congratulations, no sign of pride, just an empty phrase before he turned and walked away, blending back into his crowd. I stood there, watching his figure disappear. Then I looked around this room. This place where everyone was complicit in my exclusion. Did they think I would endure all of this in silence? Did they think I would stay quiet? If so, they had forgotten something important. I was no longer the Lucy they once knew. I set my glass down, took a deep breath. Then I lifted my glass again, running my fingertip along the rim. A sharp clink rang out, cutting through the air. And the room fell silent. If they wanted a game, I would give them a show to remember. I stood in the center of the room, a chilled glass of champagne in hand. The atmosphere shifted, the weight of my action settling over the party like a thick fog. Conversations faded. One by one, heads turned toward me. Some looked confused, others curious. But what pleased me the most was the look in my father's eyes. Unease. And Karen, her grip on her wineglass tightening, her expression laced with quiet alarm. They didn't know what I was about to do. I lifted my glass slightly and smiled. I suppose this is a special occasion, isn't it? A grand celebration for the man of the night. My father's shoulders relaxed slightly, maybe thinking I would simply say something polite and move on. He raised his glass, waiting. I let them wait. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch a little longer. Letting them wonder what I would say next. Then, with a voice calm but edged with ice, I continued. My father always taught me that family is meant to be a place of respect and support. That we should always stand by each other. Isn't that right? A few people nodded, assuming I was reinforcing my father's beliefs. They were wrong. I turned, meeting his gaze directly. But then I realized that, for some people, family only exists as long as you follow the rules they set. Step outside their expectations, and suddenly you become a disgrace. An outsider. The energy in the room shifted, instantly. Tension rippled through the crowd like a wave. My father blinked but said nothing. Karen forced a tight smile, her fingers gripping her glass as if she wanted to crush it. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, my father would see me differently. That he would finally acknowledge me. I let out a small, humorless laugh. But then I realized something. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I never even had a chance. Lowering my glass, I let my gaze sweep across the room, meeting each pair of eyes that had once dismissed me. My father only recognized those who followed the path he had set, the children he could control, mold to his liking. But me? I chose to live my own way, and for that, I became the family disappointment. I paused, raising an eyebrow with mock amusement. Oh no, wait, they were kind enough to remind me of that with the lovely little name tag they prepared just for me. A few people exhaled sharply. The murmurs started. I saw Hunter frown, Olivia's eyes widened. Karen tried to keep her composure, but her fingers trembled as she set her glass down. My father cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. Lucy, not now. I laughed. Not now? I tilted my head. Oh, but Dad, it seems like it's never the right time for you to acknowledge me as your daughter, is it? Silence. I stepped forward slowly, closing the distance between us. All my life I only wanted you to be proud of me. Just once. But I get it now. That will never happen. Because I'm not Hunter. I'm not Olivia. I'm not someone you can manipulate. I saw his jaw tighten, but he didn't deny it. Because he knew I was right. And my dear stepmother. I turned to Karen, giving her a slow, disdainful smile. You've spent years trying to erase me from your perfect little family portrait, but unfortunately for you, I'm still here. Karen stiffened but forced a fake smile. Lucy, you're being overly sensitive, it was just a joke. Oh, was it? I cut in, my voice light yet sharp as a blade. Well then, I have a joke for you too. I raised my glass, letting my gaze sweep across the room. Happy birthday, Dad, and congratulations to everyone here. I paused just long enough for them to hold their breath. Because this will be the last time any of you ever see me. A wave of shock rippled through the room. Olivia's mouth fell open, Hunter's brow lifted, Karen blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what was happening. And my father, he was frozen. Lucy, don't you dare. What? I didn't let him finish. I set my glass down on the table and turned away. No explanations, no hesitation. I could hear the panic behind me. Some voices called my name. I didn't stop. I walked through the doors, feeling lighter than ever before. I wasn't running away. I was setting myself free. And as the doors shut behind me, I knew one thing for certain. I was never coming back. I slammed the car door shut, sitting upright in the driver's seat, my breath still unsteady from everything that had just happened. I had really done it. Not in a daydream. Not in some imagined scenario where I finally had the courage to stand up to them. I had done it, right in front of them. My heart was still pounding, but not from fear. Not from doubt. It was adrenaline, the rush of finally breaking free from the toxic cycle they had trapped me in. I pressed the ignition button, but didn't drive just yet. I sat there, staring through the windshield at the brightly lit mansion behind me. The music still played, but I knew no one inside was in the mood to celebrate anymore. They were talking. They were shocked. They were angry. And I didn't care. I pulled my phone from my purse and unlocked it. A string of messages flashed across the screen. Karen, you've gone too far, Lucy, come back immediately. Olivia, are you trying to ruin this party? Unbelievable. Hunter, you seriously have issues, talk to Dad. I let out a small, amused scoff, scrolling past them without replying. My phone vibrated in my hand. My father was calling. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the decline button. A part of me wanted to pick up, to hear what he had to say, but I already knew how this would go. He wouldn't apologize. He would only try to regain control, to feed me more empty words about family and responsibility. I declined the call. A text popped up immediately after. Dad. Come back, we need to talk. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say to them. The next morning, I woke up in my small apartment, sunlight streaming through the window. No more fake laughter, no more snide remarks, no more condescending stares. I turned on my phone. Dozens of unread messages. I pressed block number on each name. Dad. Karen. Olivia. Hunter. Done. I sat still for a few seconds, waiting to see if guilt would creep in. But it never did. All I felt was relief. 3 days later, as I was getting ready for work, my phone rang from an unknown number. I hesitated, then decided to answer. My father's voice came through, low and steady as always. Lucy. I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. I want you to come back, he said bluntly. You can't just walk away from family like this. I let out a quiet laugh, stepping toward the window and looking down at the street below. Did you call to control me or to apologize? Silence. I already knew the answer. Family is supposed to stick together, Lucy. His voice dropped. I don't want this to escalate any further. I tightened my grip on the phone. Not escalate further? As if everything they had done to me before wasn't already enough. You never truly saw me as part of this family. I spoke slowly, each word severing the final thread between us. Don't pretend that you suddenly care now. Lucy, don't be selfish. I laughed. Did you really just say that? Once again, silence. I pulled the phone away, glanced at the screen, and slowly pressed the button to end the call. No goodbyes. In the weeks that followed, I heard nothing from them. Everything was eerily quiet. No more guilt-tripping messages, no more veiled threats, no more heavy feeling whenever my phone buzzed. But there were moments when I wondered if I had gone too far. Did I really need to cut them off completely? Maybe I should have given them a chance to change? But then I remembered. Every time they abandoned me, every belittling remark, every condescending glance. They hadn't changed, they never would. And I realized I had done the right thing. What does freedom taste like? It tastes like peace. Lucy's story is not just about cutting ties with the toxic family. It's about reclaiming her worth. Sometimes true freedom doesn't come from being accepted, but from having the courage to walk away from those who no longer belong in your world. Society binds us to the word family, but blood doesn't always mean love. You are not obligated to maintain relationships that bring you pain. True happiness comes when you choose a life where you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone except yourself. What do you think about Lucy's decision? Did she go too far, or was this something she should have done long ago? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, and the journey to self-discovery.